would marry this guy because he didn't like Ghostbusters. Because he didn't want to see a movie. That's ridiculous. You're going after a guy's wife because he doesn't want to see a movie? What the hell is wrong with you people? And why is Ghostbusters this hill to die on either side?
Welcome to Idiot Plot, a comedic podcast critiquing, discussing, and analyzing the media industry through reviews, debates, and historical deep dives.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Idiot Plot. I'm David Yarosh, Jamie there. As always, are my co-hosts Alex Overdahl.
I'm ready this time.
And Justin Neitzel.
Ahoy!
On today's episode, we're going to talk about kind of a very broad subject. We don't want to have a big scripted show today. We're just going to talk about a broad subject of movie critiques, movie critics, and movie reviews. It's something that whenever we have a conversation, we usually end up talking about. So we're going to talk about kind of modern film critiquing, what's right with it, what's wrong with it, where we think it's going. And we have tons of thoughts on this. So we're going to get started right away. I'm going to kick us off with probably the biggest movie review source currently out there, which is Rotten Tomatoes. Now, I think Rotten Tomatoes is a really good resource, but I have a really big problem with people treating it like it is the end-all, be-all service for reviews. Like if a movie has a fresh score on Rotten Tomatoes, that means it's awesome. That means it's the greatest movie ever made. And people don't actually know how Rotten Tomatoes works, it seems. They don't understand that it's an aggregated score. They take all the reviews, they say which ones are positive, which ones aren't, and they give it a score based on that. There's no nuance to it. Just because a movie has a 90% score on Rotten Tomatoes doesn't mean it's a 9 out of 10 movie. But people seem to act like that's what it means, and it makes sometimes talking about movies very difficult.
Especially, one thing I hate about Rotten Tomatoes are the companies who complain about it, but yet they plaster the Rotten Tomatoes score on every TV promo saying certified fresh on Rotten Tomatoes if it's good, but if it's bad, Rotten Tomatoes is ruining going to the movies.
Even like DVD.
Yeah, it's ruining it. Like, people have sources to find out if something might be worth their time now. It's ruining it, right? Like, and some people act like Rotten Tomatoes, like, is an actual reviewer. You know what I mean? Like they'll act like Rotten Tomatoes gave it this. They didn't give it that. the aggregate of critics, which the way the aggregation works has its own problems that we'll get to. But like it's an aggregation. It's not like an actual review.
When you see a score that says 95% of critics liked it, that means 95% of critics give it a score of 6 or higher. A movie could theoretically have a 100% score on Rotten Tomatoes, score nothing but 6 out of 10s, which most people would classify as it just being an okay movie.
Right.
And the system can be gamed because of that. And I do think, though, people have a point. I don't necessarily think it's ruining movies, but I think it's oversimplifying movie reviews and movie criticisms because I always had an issue with reviews where like there's like the score, right? People always focus too much on the number. When I see a review for a movie or a video game or a book I want to read, I look at what the content of the review actually says. I really a lot of times don't pay that much attention to the score itself. And it's more, why did they give it that score? Rotten Tomatoes puts all of it on the numbers specifically. It makes it all numbers game.
Mm-hmm. Well, typically what I used to do typically would be I check out the Rotten Tomatoes score, unless it was a movie that I did not care to know what the critics thought. And then I have certain reviewers that I go to look at and see how ones who match more of how I feel about certain movies, and then see what they thought. And then I base whether I go see it or not based on that.
And that's how you should do it. Is you should find people that, but like you guys, right? I know right now for a movie that me and Justin are going to probably like the movie the same amount or close to it, and Alex will like it 10% less than we do normally. but you kind of know how to gauge, what you think based off of that.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's all part of media literacy too, right? It's being able to actually understand why you like a movie. Because nothing gets me more riled up. Now, I know not everyone cares much about movies as I do. I get it, but it's the people that act like they're giant movie buffs. They're in love with movies, and you ask them, "Hey, why'd you like this movie?" And the response is, "Because it's good."
I liked it because it's good. It's good because I liked it.
Yeah, okay, but why is it good? I liked it.
Well, see, this is I have this problem with some friends who aren't the biggest moviegoers, or my parents are like, "Oh, is the movie good?" I'm like, "Yeah, I really enjoyed this." But my parents, they like completely different things than what I do. So what I find enjoyable or what I hate, they'll love for some reason.
Mm-hmm. Which is fine. Everyone's entitled to their opinion.
Exactly.
But
it's definitely remove some nuance from it. It's plopping it down to a raw, is it good or is it not? There's a lot more to it.
And Rotten Tomatoes, I think, is part of that issue of is it good, not? And really, my only issue with people are the people that consider themselves to be film people, but can't articulate why I like a movie.
Yeah. Well, one example to talk about Rotten Tomatoes versus the different sites, right? Like Metacritic, which has less critics and goes by average score. So two movies that got pretty, right, and we'll get into all of the critic scores because they don't always have just is it good or not interest in mind either. They aren't always judging it by its own merits. But two examples: Nobody, which just came out, the action film with Bob Odenkirk, and a couple of years ago, Blade Runner 2049. So Nobody has 82% and Blade Runner 2049 has 88%. So they're right next to each other in terms of percentage. Both certified fresh, both have an absurd number of reviews, over 200. Metacritic, the average score, Nobody, 63 out of 100, so 6.3. Blade Runner 2049, 8.1, 81 out of 100.
Okay.
So by theirs, that's universal acclaim. That's if you look up a lot of classic films or big time films, they'll have anything over an average of 8 is amazing. And Nobody, 6.3 average, that's good, but that's just above the cutoff for, you know what I mean? Being generally favorable.
That's I enjoyed it enough to give it a good score.
Yeah.
Right, but those two, in terms of percentage, are right next to each other. But one is universally acclaimed, and one is it's solid, it's decent.
Mm-hmm. And that's a really good point, right? Is that Rotten Tomatoes, like you said, takes the nuance out of it. It makes it seem like Nobody is as good as Blade Runner 2049, and then you have to see. Rotten Tomatoes has where you can see the average score. It's just buried on the movie site.
No one everyone just looks at the big score. They don't care about what the average was of the fresh reviews were given to it.
Actually, can you even see the average now?
Yeah, I believe you still can.
Because I'm on there right now, and I actually don't see it anymore.
You gotta click on the.
Oh, yep. Okay, I gotcha.
Number.
Yeah, so it says the average and the number. So you have to click on the number now. And you also have to click on the number to even see the top critics thing. So see, they're trying to hide that, which gets to my point. Well, one of my points about Rotten Tomatoes. Now that they're hiding the top critics thing, is holy shit, the number of reviews is absurd. It's outrageous. Think about how many respected critics do you think are out there, right? Let's say, a lot of old ones might have 50 reviews, whatever. Let's see. I just pulled up a recent one. Well, I just pulled up Blade Runner, right? 440. It counted 440. Spider-Man Homecoming, 391. Let's see what Kong is at. Probably
it's at 341. I'm on Kong right now. It's at 341.
341. Do you really think there are 341 legitimate critics?
I mean that. Well, like that. What that always kind of brings is like because they pull everyone right. Like that was one of my favorite parts of when you see a DVD for a bad movie. And on the back of the DVD, it's like a great time for the whole family. It's like some like TV station from like Tucson, Arizona.
Yeah,
it's who they're quoting from. It's kind of like now like the large version of that, where they're just pulling literally anyone that's a journalist that talks about movies that scores.
But like,
now.
At this point, it's anyone with a website, which is
or a YouTube channel.
Anybody. Yeah, YouTube channels, websites are all getting counted, so you can pour this in, and who that helps.
Are the movies.
Think about that. Right. Think about the MCU. Think about big dumb blockbusters, right? If you get like a bunch of random people on websites who had fun, they can give it a positive review. You can count that, and you can drown out the people who are like, who have seen a lot more and are like, yeah, this is kind of shit. So like, I mean, Thor: Dark World is, you know, everybody considers that garbage, and it's still positive. It's still positive because the combination of you've got enough, and it's Disney, who always gets a little bit of a boost.
Yeah, I mean, not to implicate any sort of wrongdoing. But the fact that Disney movies seem to score, the hell, Dark World has a 75%.
I think Lion King is the worst reviewed Disney one I've seen, and it's still at like 55.
Well, to be fair, the audience score is Marvel fanboys going, everything's Marvel is great.
I've seen 10 movies, and all of them are MCU. They're my top 10 movies.
I mean, not to continuously be super mean to a specific group of people.
Yeah, I know lots of MCU fans who are fine, but we're talking about, you know, you know who I'm talking about, like.
Yeah, I know.
Well,
I know.
Also the audience,
those kinds of people.
The audience score has over 200,000 reviews for audience. It's like your number is going to get skewed by people putting higher numbers than what it deserves.
Well, I noticed that with a lot of these sites, right? Especially when you go to audience reviews, the people that review movies and everything either are those that love it so much they want to give it a high score, or those that hate it so much they want to bash it.
Yeah, like, typically.
Like you rarely see someone come out and go, "Oh, this movie is so average. I'm gonna go talk about it online." Like that really ever happens.
Until now.
So, well, because of sites like IMDb, Letterbox, which has its own pluses, everyone can be a film critic. I mean, hell, we're kind of doing the shit we're making fun of right now, aren't we? Like,
yes.
Like that's kind of what we do. Is we act like we're film critics when we're not, but at the same time, film critiquing has been kind of like a gatekeeping thing. It's kind of like about Rotten Tomatoes and IMDb and Letterboxd, is they kind of get rid of the gatekeeping of you have to work for this big publication for your opinion to matter on a movie. I like that. Yeah. That actual audiences can get a say now.
Mm-hmm.
Right. The bad part is, you know, in the critic score counting so many random places, and then there's also plenty of work being done to suppress user scores for things that users don't like, you know, that viewers don't like, that are supposed to be big, that critics gave good reviews, and there's some fighting with that.
Well, the issue with that, because I'm sure I know what you were referring to, it's because fans on Rotten Tomatoes consider themselves to be activists, and they go and they review bomb movies for various reasons.
Yeah, that stuff is stupid.
Very rarely is it because the movie's actually bad. It's usually because they go because of other stuff. But they go and they review bomb the movie. They take the score. In Rotten Tomatoes, I think now you have to like verify your own like audience review thing. Like you have to verify you've actually seen the movie. I think there's something you have to do now to actually get your score counted as the audience score. Because of the constant review bombing, and that does, the issue that creates is that potentially silences people that actually legitimately don't like movies.
Right now, if people don't like something, it gets called review bombing. Like, there is review bombing that happens a lot, but there's also, like, if a movie is unpopular, it's considered review bomb. Like, Wonder Woman 84 was called review bombing until everybody finally admitted that it was garbage.
Let's talk about Wonder Woman 1984 for a second, because that's a very curious case of the problems Rotten Tomatoes has. Because it is the only time I've seen a movie get certified fresh, then have that removed after it comes out. Like the fact that they gave it a certified fresh score, which you have to like pass a certain number of criteria to get, and for that to be removed days after it's released. As I'm not accusing Warner Brothers of anything. It's suspicious.
I think what happened was they had certain people they probably brought in to watch the movie before they released it, gave people that they thought would probably give it a positive review, they did, and then as it got released, all the other critics who finally got to watch it with everyone else was like, this movie is shit, and then it started going down.
I think that's fair, because not everyone, especially with movies in the pandemic, getting pre-screened copies of it has been
difficult
because I know that for some movies, especially early on, like New Mutants and Tenet, critics were being forced to see the movies in the theaters, which is why a lot of those movies don't have a ton of reviews, or at least didn't get them for a very long time.
Or have reviews where it seems very positive, but then they give it a negative spin because they're like, oh, you sent me out into the theater.
Yeah, that was an issue that thankfully no longer exists. Because Colin, they're telling you to go to a theater and see it. Mm-hmm. But beforehand, I think you had issues with access. So I think a lot of critics just didn't have access to Wonder Woman 1884 until it came out on HBO Max, which, yeah, like we said, like when it came out on Christmas Day, it was sitting at, I think, like probably high 80s.
I think like 82 something I bought.
Yeah. Which is like unthinkable now.
Well, which was weird because I was seeing some people say that it wasn't very good, but yet the score was still high. I'm like, what's going on?
Yeah, there was some really weird stuff with that movie specifically. And there have been a couple instances where people are saying it's not good, but yet the scores are pretty high. A good example, I think, of that, just for my personal life, would be Captain Marvel. Like, I don't know a single person who's seen that movie that likes it that much. I really don't. I don't know a single person that has watched that movie and likes it.
Or at least likes it 79%.
Likes it as high as the reviews are for it.
I feel like Disney, like, there is something to be said about, like, can it really be true that every single Disney movie that's come out for like 15 years gets mostly positive reviews? Like, there's kind of like a Disney bonus.
Well, I think it also had pretty much got the benefit of the doubt after Infinity War came out, because that was the next one. So it was basically like, it's not that bad.
Yeah, and I actually personally, I think part of it might also be is I think critics, which I'm glad they're doing. I mean, they're doing it sparingly, but I think they're starting to review movies now based solely on fan expectation. So, like, something like Captain Marvel, they're like, I don't like the movie, but fans will, so high score.
And I don't think they should do that. Like,
I mean, that's what happened with Snyder Cut, Justice League. That's exactly what happened.
People give it that extra bump, like, this isn't good. Oh, but it exists, and fans got what they wanted. 6 out of 10, positive. But, like, I think that's so disingenuous, because the critics have to... You have to review it based on what you think. That's the point.
I mean, this is like, are we going to start adding asterisks to movie scores now based off of this? Be like, oh, I didn't like it, but fans will love it, so high review. Well, I actually love this movie, so I'm going to give it a high review. So what, nothing's ever going to get a bad review?
Right.
Well, but then you have the instances where critics will attack fans because fans... Like, because either fans don't like a movie that they liked, or fans like a movie that they didn't. And you have instances of that where the fans are like, come on, like, oh no, sorry, you're wrong.
Yeah,
it's good.
Not everyone's gonna like the same stuff you do, and I mean, I don't love everything you love, David. I don't love everything Alex loves, but we can at least talk about, and I can at least respect why you would like a movie, and
yeah,
we just gotta stop hate. You can't just keep throwing out like, oh, you didn't like this movie because it had female characters or blah 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 blah, all these stupid reasons. Like, no, there's reasons why we didn't like certain movies.
I think, well, like, just looking at here, critics' consensus of Justice League, the Zack Snyder cut. Zack Snyder's Justice League lives up to its title with a sprawling cut that expands to fit the director's vision and should satisfy the fans who will it into existence. Like, boom, it's on the top of the article, top of the page for it. They're basically saying that part of the critic consensus is this gives fans what they want. And that's not even true with that movie. It only gives certain fans what they wanted.
Yeah.
It doesn't give all fans what they wanted.
Also, and I mean, here's, a big issue with them not reviewing it based on what they think. Number one, lots of people can like things that aren't very good, like Transformers. But also, beyond that, how often are they wrong in anticipating what people like, and how often does what people think of it initially change later?
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's happened throughout the history of film. Things that are unpopular at the time, but later are loved.
Are you taking this where I think you're taking?
Well,
this?
there are lots of places I could go. I don't have to go there yet, because that's got a whole other can of worms.
Well, I think a good modern example of this whole phenomenon is probably Star Wars: The Last Jedi. Which that I know that's a sore spot in our friend group. That's a sensitive topic. But
I was right.
No,
I'm gonna fight you on that, Alex. I did like the movie when it first came out, but after seeing what they've done with the entire trilogy, looking back, it's like, well, this movie serves no fucking purpose. It's just there.
And I think a big issue that it has too, I think at least at the time, that confused everyone, is the fact that it was so like you came in that movie, and the critic score, I think even still, is stupidly high. Yeah, it's at 90% critic, 42% fan. So it's fans, which they blame on review bombing. But if you look at how that movie has been perceived over time, I mean, the hype on it has died considerably. Even before Rise of Skywalker came out and made it completely pointless, I think even in people who rewatch it, like I rewatched it, I still have overall positive feelings of it. But that means I gave it like a 3 out of 5. It doesn't mean I love the movie. I give it overall positive vibes, but like it has flaws.
It's not Empire.
It's not great. It has many issues, but 90%. And what's weird about the 90% thing, at least to me, is that honestly, you look at critic reviews, you look at fan scores, they're usually honestly fairly close. At least not 90 to 42. That's pretty.
Yeah, that's one of the biggest discrepancies, because sometimes you'll see like 60-something% audience, and something is more like, whether their complaint is legit or not. Some people will be like, oh, artsy, oh, awards bait, whatever. And like sometimes they're flat out wrong. Other times it's like, yeah, this movie is kind of pretentious and it doesn't have a point. But other times, like, you'll see some awards ones get weirdly lower audience scores. But that's like, 90-something to 80-something or 80-something to 70-something, right? Like, well, it's not.
For context.
Also, you won't get as many audience going to see these big Oscar movies typically as much as you will the big blockbuster movies, so that can also lower the score is with less reviews.
Less of a sample.
Yes.
Yeah.
For context, Coming to America, the sequel, is at 49%. It's a 49% critic, 39% audience. The SpongeBob movie Sponge on the Run is 67 critic, 53 audience. Nomadland.
That's a little bit difference.
Yeah, that's a little bit. Nomadland is 94-82. So, but they're within like 20%, which I think is
they're not too far.
The other one that was weirdly that had a really big discrepancy was Sausage Party. that one has like,
I hate that movie.
Yeah, that one's 82 to 50. 82 audience, 50. No, sorry, 82 critic, 50 audience.
Well, again,
which is weird. You feel like that it would be reversed.
Yeah. It doesn't feel right.
But the other thing is,
that movie doesn't feel.
Did people not watch the trailers, and did people still not think that this was an R-rated animated movie? Because I still know people that went into the movie and is like, well, this isn't like Disney or anything. It's like, no, did you not watch the trailer?
I do. I honestly find it shocking that in this internet day and age with all these resources, people can still go into a movie and not know what they're getting into.
I know.
Yeah, well, because Sausage Party, you would think it's like a kid's film. It's marketed as a kid's film, but people know that's not. Like it was designed to be a kid's film for adults. Like it had that Toy Story level of magic, but with super crude, gross, dark humor.
Well, like the first trailer, like the first minute of the trailer, it seemed like a regular like Pixar, Disney, DreamWorks movie, and then it went dark.
And I saw the movie with my parents in the theater, which was, I mean there were little kids in that theater, as you can probably imagine.
Oh, I bet.
But there was lots of little kids in that theater, and my mom refused to buy it for me for Christmas on Blu-ray because of how gross it was. Like, Mom, we saw it in theaters, and you laughed. I was there.
Well, it's like when I used to work at a movie theater, and you see some of the movies that parents would take their kids to. It's like, probably shouldn't be seeing that movie.
I know, I was that kid.
well, you wonder that how much it's kids talking to their parents, because for like Sausage Party, Deadpool, like kids could be sneaky.
Yeah.
Like, oh, it's Marvel. Oh, it's fine, and then they actually see it.
Well, the other thing is they also release green band trailers, not along with the red band, so the kid could clearly show them this one, and be like, hey.
Yeah,
it's not as bad as you think.
I mean, kids are sneaky when they want to see things that they're not supposed to. I know that because I pulled that crap.
Yeah.
Same.
Yeah, it's like one of two things will generally happen. I mean, there are kids who actually follow that stuff, but there's, the parents will let them, or you'll find a way around it. Like, that's just the truth. Yeah. Like, people will find a way to see what they want to see.
Mm-hmm.
But I think with honestly, when we went to Last Jedi, we went as a group, and that first night, and like, well, it was Friday. Yeah, it was Friday
night. It was you. It was the three of us, and then guest of the show, Jeff Pritzel and Helena, were also with us.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember, like, we saw like right before the movie started, Justin, you had, I think, the scores up, or like I had peeked quick at the scores, and we had said like, oh, it's probably people like review bombing or like being mad that there's like too many female characters or something. Like, I assumed it was bullshit. Probably.
Yeah. We assumed it was bullshit.
Force Awakens get bombed too.
I'm pretty sure.
A little bit early. I think by the end it was positive, but I think a little bit early.
I don't know if it was early. I think it was more later. It wasn't until like,
yeah, when people started going like, this is just a New Hope.
Yeah, and then Rey's a Mary Sue, which I fought for a while, and now it's like, yep, she's a Mary Sue.
Well, I don't know if she's a Mary Sue. I think she's just a bad character.
Well, she doesn't go through any problem. Everything she does is perfect. So
right, like overpowered character with no. Yeah, I mean, she's not even really a character. That's true. She has no personality. That's the problem.
Mm-hmm. and anyway, back to opening night.
But yeah, anyway, so and then like literally there were moments where I looked around to see if people were watching the same movie as me. The one moment, the Mary Poppins moment, I legit looked around to see like if it was real, if I was actually watching this movie.
I was laughing.
And that's the thing, like, so it was legit, but like everybody was just attacking and saying, oh, people are review bombing for this or this. And I'm just like, yeah, I'm thinking, my comment then was like, afterwards we went to like a McDonald's, right? And it was the McDonald's Inquisition.
Well, everybody
liked it
because we were so we were so quiet. I remember we walked into that McDonald's. No one said a word. We ordered our food, and we all just sat down, like one by one. We sat at the booth. We got in the corner so no one could hear us, and we argued for hour and a half.
It started because we came out of the theater and everybody was like, somebody said something like, "Oh, that was good. That was something. That was something or whatever." And I'm like, "What?" And then everybody looks at me. The way I said,
that's not what happened. I looked at you. It was me. I know it's because I'm the one that did this. I looked at you and I asked you what you thought, and you didn't say a word to me. You just gave me that look that you always would give me when you didn't like something. Just give me a look, and you went, I went, oh, we're gonna fight. I was like, oh, okay.
And typically,
no, I didn't think. I hated it.
Yeah, but you didn't tell me that at the time because you didn't want me to slap you in the middle of a.
But I remember I said something that made everybody turn around and look at me at once, like a movie.
Well, my thing is typically big movies like that. I typically don't want to talk about until we leave the theater because I don't want to. Because there was a line of people waiting to go into the theater to go see it, and I don't want.
Yeah, I don't like that.
I ruined Alien Covenant for that one group. Do you remember that, Alex?
Good. You said I don't remember that, but you saved them.
Because we saw Alien Covenant, and we're talking about it, and then I said, "Hey, don't talk about it." I'm like, "Okay, was it good?" Went, nah. And they went, "Oh, damn!"
I remember that.
Well, I was sitting next to you, Alex, before we went into The Last Jedi, and people were walking out, and I literally put hands over my ears. I'm like, I don't want to hear a thing. I want to go in.
We're talking.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's like shut the fuck up. Which funny, go to Rise of Skywalker, I'm like, please, I would be like, please tell me so I don't get disappointed. But so anyway, we went to this McDonald's, right? And it was like the Inquisition. I was the one who hated it or whatever. But the thing I said, which I still stand by, and this points back to the perception change over time. I remember my exact words. Oh shit, do I remember my exact words? Yeah, okay, I got it. It was a few years. You'll all know I was right because what I said was it was the beginning, and the other exact thing I said was it was the beginning of the end of Star Wars.
Yeah,
I mean, you weren't wrong at that part.
Because even if you don't hate it as much as me, what that signaled in terms of how they messed things up and how they were going to have to try and correct it and get it back on course was going to mess it up even more, and that it was the direction they took it was irreversible.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And that changed over time. People were very angry at first, and there was a lot of fighting. It was very 50-50. But then Rise of Skywalker came along, and it's like, oh shit! How did we get here?
I kind of disagreed with you up until they rehired JJ, and I was like, crap, he's gonna redo everything.
Because they don't know what they're doing. And
what I didn't even realize in hindsight is that Force Awakens now looks really weak because of everything that's happened. And I liked Force Awakens a lot when it came out, actually.
Yeah.
And I think
because everything they set up was basically throw it out the window.
Yeah, and nothing.
And we're far enough along now. Like you can look at the Last Jedi scores, and because they cleared out all of the ones that they believed to be part of the review bombing, which means that according to Rotten Tomatoes, the scores on for that movie are legitimate, and it's still at 46%, and it's honestly probably where the critic scores should be. I mean, that kind of discrepancy is bizarre to me, and I think a lot of people see what I've noticed with Last Jedi specifically is the people that like it the most are people that aren't really Star Wars fans.
Mm-hmm.
It's the people that were casually kind of forced to go to the movie because it's not really a Star Wars movie. It's really not.
No.
And I think that got people that don't like Star Wars.
It becomes a Harry Potter movie at one point. Well, when they're riding on those freaking horse creatures, it's like that's straight out of Harry Potter.
I was thinking for floating in space too.
That too.
Yeah, it's very I think Rian Johnson probably could have done a good Star Wars movie. The problem is you shouldn't have given him a main title Star Wars movie. You should have let him just make a story in the Star Wars.
You should have screwed up a secondary one instead.
Yeah, because you gave him too much power, and he made this movie that fans aren't happy, and that's the weird dichotomy, especially when it comes to modern film journalism and modern film reviews, which is how much fan service do fans deserve? Because with Last Jedi, it was almost like the fans don't know what they want. That was like the story, right? Is the fans don't know what they want. Like the fans can deal when you have Justice League, the Zack Snyder cut, and it's all about it's what the fans want, it's what the fans deserve. Which is it?
Well, see, here's
the fans want. It's about making stuff that challenges fans' expectations and challenges what they know about a franchise. You can't have it both ways.
And I think the way it should, and the way that goes best, like my take might be surprising, but it's because I disagree a little bit on what Last Jedi was doing. I don't think most times, unless you're making something like Godzilla vs. Kong, which is made to not be like a story, it's just made to, be smash stuff.
Or like, Endgame, if you're going for movies that aren't meant to have stories, Avengers Endgame is really a movie.
Right. Like, if you're trying to actually make a story, what fans will think cannot enter your mind.
Yep.
Or it's going one way or another. It's going to make it weird. It'll either feel hollow or it won't actually be what they want. But like you have to make what's best for the story. But I think what Last Jedi did was almost like it wasn't even ignoring what fans will think and trying to make a good story. It was, you guys are idiots. You guys are idiots for caring about any of this. Everything you think is stupid. Here's some other shit just because. Well, like I'm gonna mess up this. I'm gonna completely turn this thing on its head or destroy it just because it didn't even help the story and left it with no story.
Well, the other problem is making a movie for the fans is not all the fans agree on what they want. So you're going to alienate somebody.
But modern film journalists seem to get mad when fans disagree with them and fans are unhappy. Mm-hmm. Which I think I'm going to move to a different movie and different.
I know exactly right. I've been waiting.
Just because we're setting this up. Now I don't know if it's okay to talk about this movie. Yeah, it's been like 5 years, and I'm still
like a national tragedy. Like, what's the statute of limitations?
Yeah, exactly, right. I'm so nervous talking about it because people's careers were ruined by having the wrong thought of this movie.
When this gets released, David, they're all going to come after you.
Yeah, no shit. This will be on my tombstone. But the movie I'm talking about, which I hope it's been 5 years. I hope we can finally have an honest conversation about it and just how ridiculous the story behind it was. But this is the 2016 Ghostbusters reboot. Really, the big issue, we're talking about reviews, right? The big issue I had with that movie, because I've seen the movie. My honest opinion, it's a terrible movie. It's not funny. It's not great. They ad-libbed way too much where the pacing of every scene is destroyed because scenes don't have ends because they're just being ad-libbed.
Or don't make sense in a coherent story-wise.
Yeah. There's no structure to it. It's not a good movie. I'm not here to talk about whether or not it's a good or bad movie. I want to talk about what led up to that movie and the way that both critics and fans handled the release of that movie. I mean, when they announced it, fans weren't happy, and I don't necessarily think it was because of the direction that they were going with the women-led plot. I mean, there were some assholes that were upset it was women, but I think
I met an asshole. I had this summer job and working in a factory, and I was talking to somebody, and they're like, "Oh yeah," he's like, "Their whole problem is it's all females." I'm like, "What's the big deal?" He's like, "Oh, it's a man's thing." I'm like, "You mean the 2 movies that came out earlier? What's like?" He's like, it's not part of the franchise. I'm like, yeah, because you have 2 freaking movies.
Yeah, it's
and one's not even that great.
I wish they cast different women. I wish they cast people who are funny. Like honestly, I think the dream cast for me for that movie should have been Tina Fey, Amy Poehler, Maya Rudolph, Aubrey Plaza.
Ooh, that would have been great.
I would watch that movie.
It should have been those four.
Well, and the other problem is they were making a comedy. Well, what's the problem with the second Ghostbusters? It's too much comedy versus the first one.
The first one is like a straight horror movie. If you look at actually how it's structured,
funny things happen, and you have Peter Venkman making funny quips, but mostly it's played pretty straight as a horror kind of.
Yeah, but going back to the movie of 2016 specifically, I remember in the lead up to that movie, just the fans and the critics going at it on the internet to a degree that blows my mind. That you have actual big film critics and film journalists going after each other. Now, yeah, some fans like the comments on Leslie Jones' Twitter that made her quit Twitter were horrible. I mean, I read some of them, and I'm not going to read them because they were that terrible. But they were racist, they were horrible, and they should not be condoned anyway. But the way that the critics were treating some of the fans that didn't like the movie is in a lot of ways equally disgusting.
Yeah. Well, you're automatically calling people a bunch of sexist people that don't like the movie and it could have been a good movie, but it's just, and with them going also with a comedy is very subjective. It's the hardest one to nail half the time. But
the big issue I had specifically, this is a specific case, and that is James Rolfe. You might know him as the angry video game nerd. He's been on YouTube forever. Big Ghostbusters fan. He made a video in lead up to the movie because people were hounding him. When are you going to review Ghostbusters? When are you going to talk about Ghostbusters? They went after him hard, and he made a video saying that I'm not going to review this movie. I don't think they should be rebooting Ghostbusters quite yet. I don't like the direction that they're taking. I mean, his point against it was a point I had with it, which is it was a hard reboot that they were marketing as part of the mainstream timeline, which it's not.
Yeah, the first trailer said is like 4 scientists 30 some years ago or whatever. And it's like, but you said this is a completely new universe.
Yeah, it's extremely misleading what they were doing, what they're going for, and that was part of his issue. This guy got attacked by every major journalist, film journalist out there. I mean, even Patton Oswalt was making fun of the guy, but they weren't making fun of his argument. They were countering his complaints with actual points.
That's when you know you have a valid argument.
Patton Oswalt was making fun of his vocal delivery. Some other critic, who I don't have the name in front of me, but I know vividly because it stuck out to me, made fun of his wife because he had a wedding ring, and was basically, who would marry this guy? Because he didn't like Ghostbusters. Because he didn't want to see a movie. That's ridiculous. You're going after a guy's wife because he doesn't want to see a movie? What the hell is wrong with you people? And why is Ghostbusters this hill to die on either side? Why are the fans going after anyone that, like, basically trying to defend like Ghostbusters is up there with Citizen Kane? And why are critics defending this movie to the death? I mean, a big example of this is I can't think of his name.
This fucking flaming turd of a movie.
Why can't I think of this guy's name? He did stuff with Roger Ebert. He was Gene Siskel's.
Richard Roper.
Roper gave the movie a negative review and got attacked for it. He had to make a second. Review justifying why he made the first review. He had to defend himself.
He's like one of the biggest film critics of all time.
Yeah, and he had to justify his own opinions because it disagreed with people that like the movie. It blew my mind. It blew my mind like that this was actually happening. Okay, I found an article on comments Richard Roper about Ghostbusters that they're sent to him, but I can't actually read the article. Here they said his review was mean-spirited and poor taste because he called it a horrifying mess. He actually even had a comment on the movie where he said it was great. He said critics graded Ghostbusters on a curve, and I don't think there is anything more accurate than that statement.
That's sometimes the best remark is the simplest. Like,
well, every comeback to his review is kind of going back to what we started this podcast with, is it has a 73% on Rotten Tomatoes. That is the response. Is we don't like what other people do. That's fine. So that doesn't make his point invalid. Just because other people had a different, it's this damn circular logic of other people like the movie, which means your argument is invalid. Yet his dissenting opinion shouldn't be buried because other people like the movie.
Well, like we were talking about earlier, like you said, a movie could have 100% on Rotten Tomatoes and all be made out of 6s. On Rotten Tomatoes, it currently sits at 74% certified fresh, but the average rating is 6.5.
Yeah, if you look at the reviews, a lot of them are basically saying, not a great movie, but I'm going to praise it for what it's doing. 6 out of 10.
Because women empowered.
Well, and not to get political, because I don't want to get political, but the movie became a political lightning rod for whatever side that you were on. Mm-hmm. Whatever side of the spectrum you were on, you had to pick a side in Ghostbusters, and it was so stupid that's the political battle is over freaking Ghostbusters. Why can't we just enjoy the movie? I've met people that have liked Ghostbusters 2016. I've met people that have hated Ghostbusters 2016. Both sides are valid. If you went to the movie and you had a good time, that's all that matters. And if you went to it and you didn't like it, that's okay too. I don't understand why journalists, why actual people are going after other people for just not agreeing with them.
Well, and that's the thing. Like he said, the Roper quote, it's been graded on a curve, and then you have journalists coming after Roper for having a different opinion. Like the whole thing, who kind of vaguely mentioned at the beginning that, people reviewing a movie, the movie is not always just being judged on its own merits when it should be. Mm-hmm. And it's not anything new either.
I mean, Polygon had an article saying how we've lost the ability to criticize Ghostbusters. Like they straight up acknowledge how because some people were saying horrible, awful things, and now it makes it where we can't talk about the movie at all in any sort of negative fashion.
Yeah, I mean, you didn't even want to bring it. You like hesitate to even bring it up. I mean, it's like it's become like Voldemort. Like nobody can talk about this movie.
At least honestly,
I think it'll be interesting when the new one comes out, like how the discussion is going to be around that.
Yeah, like the fact that James Rolfe became a national headline in big name articles like he got on IndieWire, New York Times for just saying I don't watch the movie. Like the fact that him saying he don't watch a movie, we started this national outrage, I think speaks to how messed up this whole situation was. And really, I don't think whether the movie's good or bad at this point matters. I think the discussion to take away from that movie is how the internet and how the media handle it, and how we can do better to make sure that this never happens again.
But I think that's part of the problem. Like at that scale, it hasn't happened again. But it did start that big trend, like we talked about with Last Jedi. Like we talked about with other things. Like it started that trend of movies kind of being awarded for things outside of the movie, and then mega fan outrage, and then arguing between critics and fans.
Yeah, like it's so ridiculous, especially when you have some movies that like Annihilation, right? Is essentially kind of doing what Ghostbusters was trying to do, and I think it was way more successful.
Oh my gosh,
it was it's an amazing movie, and no one saw it. Nobody cared.
That's a movie to die on a hill on.
Like an internet post like Annihilation Appreciation Thread, and then everybody floods in there, and then it'll disappear for like another year, and then people will like bring it up again because it was unfortunately not recognized.
Mm-hmm. But I guess I'm done with my Ghostbusters rant. Like I needed to say it. Like someone needed to basically call out everyone. Like Ghostbusters fans, get over yourself. It's just a movie. Like literally both sides. It's just a movie. It's something that we go to escape our lives. We sit down, we watch it, we either have a good time or we don't, and then we move on.
Well, that's the whole Well, that's the whole thing. I never understood. It was like, so someone didn't like a movie you liked. Big whoop. Is that going to make you not appreciate or watch the movie ever again? You might not watch it with them, but...
I mean, I'll be honest. I've gotten yelled at a few times because I get passionate, but I think people don't realize I'm not being serious.
Yes, but you won't.
When someone says a bad movie, I'll be like, ew. But I'm not being serious. I don't care. You like what you like.
Yeah, but you'll say ew, but then you're like, I don't care. You enjoy the movie. It's the people that are like, oh, like whatever movie you like, except if you don't like this movie, fuck you. It's like, well,
it's the gatekeepers.
Yeah.
Which
that's what some of this has become with like Ghostbusters. It was like I felt like that was the first movie that you weren't allowed to dislike.
Yeah, it was, and it's become this cultural thing of like one movie. There's like one movie a year that people aren't allowed to dislike
without fail.
And I think and what's interesting to go, I still don't think people realize the consequences of that, like we talked about with Ghostbusters, but there's other consequences of like movies being forgotten or ones being propped up, but then there's more backlash towards them because it's like, and nobody wants to like this. Like, stop making me try and like this.
Well,
stop trying to make a Joker a thing.
What happened with Ghostbusters is what happens when you do that, which is nobody saw it and it lost a bunch of money. People liked it, but people were so exhausted by it they just didn't go see it.
And again, like the whole outside factors motivating those reviews is definitely more common now. It's been revived, but it's not a new thing. To do the history lesson thing, it can like change. Yeah.
I know where we're going. Go for it. Do it now. I didn't mind
because it changed the entire industry. But basically, so Michael Cimino, this is late 70s, early 80s. Director, he made a movie in the early 70s that was successful, got something that never happens anymore, but was very common then, which is like carte blanche, like, all right, here's your script. We like it. You want to make a 3-hour epic? That's cool. You can spend as much money as you want. Just go out there, man.
You might know him for doing The Deer Hunter.
Right, which was the first one. That was his first one with carte blanche. He made The Deer Hunter, which won Best Picture, Best Director, is, considered one of the best films ever. It's on a lot of lists. It won a bunch of Oscars. So after that, he was like the big thing. So they give him, again, as much money as he wants to make a film called Heaven's Gate, which actually he had written before Deer Hunter. But at this point, Heaven's Gate starts shooting, and lots of stories in the media start coming out about the set, about his ridiculous perfectionism, about him being very prickly, kind of a jerk. Some of that might not be true. The ridiculous demands are true. Like there was a scene in a courtyard and he wanted a tree in the middle, and he found a tree he liked, so he had them transport the tree, put an irrigation system underneath the ground, and then put that tree in the courtyard for a scene that lasts about 5 minutes. They built an entire city street with full buildings, and it's amazing to watch in the film that like they're in the building and the whole street is behind them. They built this entire town. He said the street was too small. They widened it 6 feet, which meant they had to completely destroy the set and rebuild it. So this was happening, but the media, right? The trades, the big newspapers, like they ran with every single story. It would be like, Michael Cimino kicks a dog on set, it'd be like literally anything. And it became very big. The story behind it became bigger than the movie. And at that point, everybody hated him. And they even started to question, like, was The Deer Hunter that good? Right? Like stuff like that already started happening. There was already backlash to that because of stories on set from a movie they hadn't seen.
Well, it kind of happened earlier last year, too, with the whole, with Tenet. Everyone And Anne Hathaway had her thing like, Christopher Nolan doesn't like chairs on set, and gave his reasoning.
I completely forgot about that.
And then everyone started hating on Christopher Nolan and said he was a overrated hack. And it's like, because you took one thing that someone said out of context.
Yeah. So imagine that it was like that times 10. And then the movie comes in, it's over 4 times over budget, but it's done. It's done. It's, I don't know, 3.5 hours. It gets screened for a very select number of critics about a week before the premiere. It gets absolutely blasted. Like, people call it one of the worst films ever made. Now, and so there's a very famous review. Some of the critics even admit to this, that there became like wanting to one-up each other with quips about how bad it is. Because the first review that came out was from the New York Times. Now, here's some quotes from this. The New York Times said, "It's something quite rare in movies these days, an unqualified disaster." They compared it to a forced 4-hour walking tour of one's own living room. And the end of the review said, "It fails so completely that you might suspect Mr. Cimino sold his soul to the devil to obtain the success of the Deer Hunter, and the devil has just come around to collect." That was an actual critic. That was a review in the New York Times. So the studio freaks out because the reviews are universally negative. After 1 week, they pull it for an entire year, cut over an hour, and try and release it again. And of course, they cut over an hour from something that's paced to be a 3.5-hour epic. It's gonna be garbage. So it got slammed again, and it cost $44 million, which is the equivalent now of $150, and it made $3.5, which is the equivalent of $9. So imagine a $150 million movie coming out now that made $9 million. So what happened? United Artists stopped being an independent studio. They sold to MGM. Studios used that as the big excuse that they had been waiting for to slowly start taking creative control. So this was like, we talk about the director-driven artistic freedom ones. This was the start of the clamps. They had wanted to put on everybody, because back then, like, people would get huge budgets to make director-driven films. You know, Peter Bogdanovich, Scorsese, and Spielberg, who are still around. Like Jaws, you know, get made now that way. Like, they just kind of let him do what he wants. Like, so this was the beginning of the end of that. Changed the whole industry, and we're still trying to get back to that because studios have so much absurd power now. And it turns out the movie's really good. Like, the movie has been, like, the perception has completely changed now. I've seen it. I loved it. It's a great film, and like they restored the original cut in 2012 and screened it. It got standing ovations. It got a Criterion. It got like all this praise, which thankfully he was still alive to see. But like, it ruined the dude's career. It changed the whole industry because of stuff that had nothing to do with the movie.
And I think, actually thinking about it, there is a reverse effect of this, which is a movie we've talked about a few times on this podcast, which is Terry Gilliam's Brazil, where critics Terry Gilliam, the director, was fighting with the studio, and the critics were on the side of Gilliam.
Yeah.
Even though Gilliam, in a lot of ways, was doing kind of the same things that, at least behind the scenes, not necessarily on set, but distribution, that Cimino was doing. He was doing the same things.
The famous letter, the famous letter that helped the proper cut of Brazil get out, where, he puts in the newspaper ad, wear my movie to the critics. Cimino did the same thing. He did the same thing in 1980 when they pulled the 3.5-hour cut to be like, please put it back. And he got made fun of.
Mm-hmm. And Gilliam did the same thing and got praised. I mean, Brazil was named like the best movie of the year by the LA Critics Society, and they admitted it was partially political. It was partially because that they felt like that they were helping out an artist get his film come out.
The irony that's 5 years later. It's only 5 years later. Like,
and you see this activism in film critics even now to this day, in honestly more frequently, where you'll see them, use their reviews as soapboxes. Like reviews for Tenet being filled with people telling people to not go to theaters. which, not to get too much into that, but really that's not the job of a movie critic.
Right, the movie should be judged on its merits.
Yeah. The safety of releasing it and seeing it is one thing, and I do disagree with Warner's decision to make people see it in theaters with other people. Like for critics to make them see that, I do kind of disagree with that. But
it was
that's not
trial run for what they later decided to do. So
yeah, it's but you see it again. You see the activism with Ghostbusters. You see it. I would arguably say that there is activism with Zack Snyder's Justice League. It's hard to do, and people are falling for it. And I just, when I see a review, I want to know what's good. I want to know what's bad, and that's what led to, I think, which is another big topic with film critics, kind of segueing into a different thing that I think is worth talking about, and that is the rise of the YouTube movie critic.
Oh,
like people were more willing to trust someone on YouTube than they were the big publications, because the big publications arguably became pretentious, everything became Oscar bait. You know, especially now recently, there's been this big divide between movies that win awards and movies that fans like to see, and movies that audiences enjoy. I think that divide's getting bigger and bigger. But the way to kind of change that is the online film critic. And I mean, you have the big ones like Jeremy Jahns, Chris Stuckman, Christian Harloff, and people like Collider. Then you have like the joke ones like your Doug Walkers, who's known as the nostalgia critic. How he's become I mean, he's kind of a meme now, but I'll admit, I watched him back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
Back in middle school, everyone watched Doug Walker, and then I watched him intermittently until the accusations about his channel came out. But
and he made the wall video.
The wall video. This was after the wall video was the nail in the coffin of I'm never gonna watch this guy again, because his wall video. Now, for context, Pink Floyd's The Wall, the favorite album of all time. The movie I don't think is amazing, but he basically remade the whole movie as his review of it, and it's so bad, it's so terrible. Like, but that's the thing about you YouTube reviewers, right? They have to try to outstunt each other.
Yep.
Yeah, that's what it's become.
To make reviews, to make contents. Some like Jeremy Jahns are able to stay kind of above that and just give good, entertaining reviews
and critiques.
Yeah, the aren't a bunch of stunts.
And then some people just give it, like, again, they wait a little bit, see what people think, and then give people exactly what they want.
I mean, in my opinion, the best ones now currently going are Adam from Your Movie Sucks on YouTube and Ralph the Movie Maker. Those two, I mean, they're pretty pretentious, and they have pretty critique opinions, I'd say, on some things.
But who doesn't from time to time?
I will say it's almost a bit like, yeah, I'll let you finish before I go to that.
Oh, I was going to say, but that said, they have a really good blend, I think, of both entertainment, but also really good arguments and really good opinions and breakdowns. Like Your Movie Sucks did a video recently on Zack Snyder's Justice League that I think is a very fair. It has really good points, really good arguments, and it's also just really freaking funny. Go ahead.
I think also one thing that's happened, because it's like, you know, some things are pretentious, whatever. I feel like qualifying, there are definitely like pretentious critics, pretentious people, pretentious movies. That word has almost started to become used to anyone who points out flaws in like big dumb movies.
Yes.
Like
I think you're spot on.
Comic book movie, if you point out flaws in it because it's like a world, you know, theme park movie, then you get called like pretentious. It's like I love this one, I don't like this one because the plot is stupid. Oh, you're just being pretentious. No, the plot is nonsense.
Well, and the other thing, like with comic book movies and everything, there is a line that we all have, whether we like it or not. And sometimes a movie just goes a little too far.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like any legitimate criticism gets called like pretentious now by certain groups of
because
fans.
What did you expect it to be?
Well,
What did you expect?
I expected it to make a little more sense than what they said.
Yeah.
I love
What did I expect it to be? That's the point. I expected it to be dumb, and I'm still disappointed.
I love what is the I love big dumb movies. What I don't love are lazy movies.
Yeah,
Exactly.
And a lot of big dumb movies are also lazy movies.
Yeah.
Especially, I would say the more recent MCU ones I would call very lazy.
They're on autopilot for sure.
But stuff like Kong v Godzilla or Godzilla vs. Kong, whatever the actual title of the movie is.
Monkey versus Lizard. We all liked it.
It was not lazy, though. You look at the camera work, you look at the visual effects, you look at the style of it. There was clearly effort and work put into it.
The coloring.
And when I review a movie, I do take the effort and production value into account when I come up with my final opinion. A big example of this would be, I'm going to pull a blast from the past, a movie that I know Alex doesn't think is real, but Justin, I know you're wrong. I know you know it's real, and that's The Brave Little Toaster.
I know it exists.
It's a movie that really not that great, has some issues, but clearly you watch that movie and there's so much effort and love put into that film. It's hard not to have a good time. Is the animation the best? No, but there's so much effort and wonder put into the musical numbers, into the weird ways it tries to terrify small children. It's when you're 3 years old, that movie will mess you up for many ways.
Mm-hmm.
But it didn't score that well with critics. But I look at it and go, hey, that's important. And I think sometimes critics ignore effort and production value when they give a score. Because just because Transformers is big, stupid, and lazy doesn't mean that every movie that's like Transformers is big, stupid, and lazy.
Mm. Well, I mean, I'll go to my favorite well of somewhat unpopular movies that I love, the Star Wars prequels, right? I mean, they do have a good overarching story that definitely helps for me, but oh my gosh, the passion in that, you can feel it through all three movies. He's going all out.
The best thing that the new Star Wars movies did is they made everyone realize just how much they liked the prequels.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely.
Because it's wait, where's the heart? Where's the soul? People took that for granted. The fact that all of them had a ton of passion and effort, even if not all of the dialogue worked in every scene, even if there was too much CG sometimes in certain spots, there's less than there is in the ones now. And there's actual effort into the story and characters, and there's energy throughout the whole film.
And they're actual characters.
Right.
And does everything work? No.
Is everything always going to work? No.
And I think Lucas got smashed by the critics for those movies for the reasons he should have been smashed for. But I think that those issues overshadowed the parts that worked too much.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then you get to the end of 3 and it's wow, this worked.
Because especially with episodes 1 and 2, he got slammed for the bad writing, for the iffy acting, and for the over-reliance, especially in Attack of the Clones, on CGI sets.
But to his credit, he did work on that in the following movie.
3 is a great movie. I have issues with 3.
I would say, looking at the writing, people slam the bad writing. It's really just specific scenes of dialogue, because the overall plot writing and the character work and what happens with the characters is very good. And even the dialogue, which people complain about, if you watch that back to back with the MCU stuff or other blockbusters that are coming out now, you might find that it compares pretty favorably.
Yeah. And honestly, the only really bad dialogue throughout the movie was stuff with young Anakin, and the romance scenes is basically where...
Yeah, that's really...
It's basically it. Otherwise, all the other dialogue is not horrible.
That Revenge of the Sith sustains one of the most interesting scenes in this series for 7 minutes of them just sitting there and talking. Mm-hmm. And that's a legendary scene, and that's literally them talking for 7 minutes.
It's arguably the best scene in the entire movie. Yeah, I mean, multiple people always bring that scene up.
I think those movies work a lot better when you treat them as a whole. Yeah. When you look at the Star Wars prequels as a single entity, and you look at the through-line story of Palpatine causing the big war, it's actually really smart.
Intergalactic backgammon.
Like it's actually really smart writing. It's damn good. So I'm going to segue to another topic on this, because I just saw this article on RottenTomatoes.com. I think we should talk about it, which is the 56 rotten movies we actually love. I kind of want to talk about these movies because I think some of these are actually really, really popular. And I think all of it goes into, you kind of brought up changes of perception, Alex. And I think that's actually could lead to some interesting looks, because
Heaven's Gate should be on there.
You're looking at movies that somehow are rotten. We have A Knight's Tale, which I haven't seen. Taken.
That one is actually really surprising to me every time.
That's not fresh.
Taken's rotten. These two they say are rotten, but are actually fresh. Which
is something like Nobody, which just came out, which got positive reviews for being like Taken, and Taken is rotten.
The Mummy and The Sandlot they say are rotten, but they're actually.
I can see
to be fresh.
I can see The Mummy. Like, it's cheesy fun, but like I could kind of like it definitely has.
Sandlot's actually a very well made movie, I think.
Yeah, that one's
great. I wish to assert my Fifth Amendment privilege.
We also have Return to Oz. Spaceballs is a rotten movie.
What?
Yeah,
that's probably a time thing.
Yeah, definitely.
Phase 4, The Life Aquatic with Steve Zissou, which is not very good, but should be rotten. Deep Blue Sea, Step Brothers.
Okay. Deep Blue Sea should probably be rotten.
Deserves to be. Step Brothers is
stupid, but
shocking.
Die Hard with a Vengeance.
Especially when you look at the other Adam McKay movies with Will Ferrell, and that's the one that a lot of people and Adam McKay himself considers the best.
It's one that people quote the most, practically.
Yeah, so it's pretty shocking. I mean, I would think it would at least be with Talladega Nights.
Yeah.
We also have Tron Legacy. That's super.
I mean, I can see that.
Yeah.
But there is some good stuff in Tron Legacy.
Three Amigos is on here, but that movie legitimately is terrible, so that doesn't shock me at all. See it goes. National Treasure is rotten.
That is a disgrace. Yeah. Shut down the critic reviewing. They just shut it all down now.
Tommy Boy, Bad Boys 1.
That I agree with. Bad Boys 2 is on there though, probably.
I think they have Bad Boys 2 rated worse than the first one.
Yeah. Legend, the Tom Cruise Ridley Scott movie. Beer Fest, which I love Beer Fest. It's probably gonna be rotten, but I love that movie.
I wonder if it is Super Troopers. I don't know where that is.
Hot Rod, which is actually a pretty popular movie.
It is.
It's the other ones. Halloween 3, Season of the Witch. That one. That's one. The perception of that movie has changed over time.
Super Troopers is rotten. It's 35% critics and 90% audience.
What?
Okay. Space Jam deserves to be rotten.
Yes.
Nice try, Rotten Tomatoes. Here's an interesting one. Actually, Super Troopers is on this list, just so you know. But an interesting one is Fast and Furious Tokyo Drift. I know many people that love that movie.
That person just changed, and I remember that's one that has legit changed over time, because I remember when it came out, people hated it. Like, the audience hated it when it came out, too.
Well, I think they hated it mostly was because Vin Diesel and Paul Walker weren't part of it, and it was new actors and everything. But now that it's been added retroactively to be technically like between 6 and 7, people love it now.
I love that Hook is technically a rotten movie that people love and act like it's a great movie. like weirdly,
the reality is somewhere in between. I liked that movie as a kid.
I like that. I haven't seen it since I was probably about 10 years old, so I probably can't honestly judge it.
I'm just gonna leave it there in my past. And
Judge Dredd's not a good movie. Shut up, Rotten Tomatoes. I'll fight you on that one. That's a rotten movie. I should stay rotten. Okay, but also Kung Pao Enter the Fist is at 13%. I do love Kung Pao, and I know many people that love Kung Pao Enter the Fist. I'm just gonna find movies that perception has changed over time quick.
I can think of one right now, and that'd be Indiana Jones 4.
That's the one I was going to bring up. That movie has over 70% positive reviews and is universally like reviled. Like that's what it has to be one of the most hated movies of the past couple decades.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember when it came out, people were like, "This is really good." Like, are you sure?
What movie did you watch? But I think one I can think of that's like a classic now. I mean, this is going way back, but Ace in the Hole was criticized for being unrealistic.
And it's not realistic.
And like it was it didn't do well at the box office, and it was not very well received. And now it's like one of Billy Wilder's best.
Well, one that will shock you that you probably didn't realize was not liked when it first came out, but Big Lebowski was not well received when it first came out.
Yeah, I've heard about that. Now it's at like 80-something%, but they count retroactive reviews now.
Mm-hmm. And that's an issue with Rotten Tomatoes too, right? Is that I feel like personally, to me, I feel like modern movies have a much better chance of being positive than older movies.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like older movies, even if they're really good, could still will have lower scores than the movie with 400 reviews. Because even like classics will only have like maybe 50 reviews max.
Yeah, something like that.
When I just looked up, so I was talking about how some of the MCU ones have over 90%. The Last Dragon has 94%. Wild Bunch has 90%. Right, like that's a all-time classic. Like, and that's at 90.
Well, and I think this might lead to a big rant. Even though we've been talking for a long time, I feel like this needs to be said. But I want to switch to Letterboxd quick. Now, I love the app. I really do love.
It's something I like, keeping track of what I want to watch and what I have watched and like.
But that said, the way it tracks reviews is kind of BS. Like, and I think a big example of that is someone made a list of the top ranked movies on Letterbox based on Critic Scores. Now, a big issue I have with Letterbox, it doesn't actually show you how much user scores a movie actually has. So it's hard to actually tell.
The newer ones will get flooded with lots of reviews, and then some classics can get slightly lower scores because a couple of people rate it low versus the people who rated it high, because there's way less reviews.
Yep. And
then some like cult films or some that only a specific group of people will watch, like anime, will give very high scores
because those that watch it are going to give it a super positive review because
people like me won't touch it with a 30-foot pole.
But even then, I feel like it's the same thing of people that have middling reviews of it aren't really going to go talk about that much. So I have the list up right here. I want to go through a couple of these movies. Because I also feel like a lot of these picks on here are like the film bro picks.
It's got a little crossover with IMDb there. IMDb is like exclusively film bro.
Yeah, I think the top two movies on IMDb are Shawshank Redemption and Dark Knight. Which
are excellent, but it's like that's like literally the most. And then like Goodfellas is there, and
every movie Christopher Nolan has ever done is like in the top 250 on Rotten Tomatoes.
Yeah, Interstellar is above 2001.
But here on Letterboxd, I think this is a really good point I'm about to make about this website. Is the number one movie on Letterboxd is Parasite. Like that, which I think shows right because everyone just watched it and everyone liked it. So therefore, it gets flooded.
5 stars.
It gets flooded with good reviews. It gets all positive reception. It's sitting at an average score of 4.6.
Oh my god!
Which is the highest on the site. Now, for context, on Letterboxd, most movies that I've seen have a score of somewhere between 3.3 and 3.7.
Yeah, that's like average, good to average kind of movies. Anything like 3.8 and above is probably really good. Especially if it's a movie made before the year 1980 and it has a score higher than 3.5. It's probably fantastic. Yeah. Like what? Dirty Harry has 3.7. So does 10 Commandments. Like,
But
and you'll see like a lot of the highest reviews are 5 stars, but the average is lower because 1 or 2 dissenting opinions lowers it a lot.
Mm-hmm. I actually
think I lowered one on accident.
I think a good example of that would be the number 2 movie, which is Come and See, which only one of us has seen.
I honestly feel like that movie is like a prank. I feel like a bunch of film people got together and we're like, what's the most obscure, shittiest movie we can get together and pump up really high, and everybody's going to go, oh, you picked like 4 good shots from this movie in the trailer. I bet that's probably a good movie I'll never watch. It's one of the worst movies I've ever seen. I love war movies. I love really thought-provoking war movies. Good thing this isn't any of those things.
But number 3 is Godfather. Number 4 is Hurricane. Number 5 is Godfather Part 2. 7 Samurai, 12 Angry Men, Autocompendicia, I can't even say that.
What?
The Human Condition Part 3, and right at the top 10 is Spirited Away. And not to make fun of people's opinions, right? We're all entitled to our opinions. But what the hell? like, what the hell?
Yeah.
And Letterbox gets pretty film bro-y. If you look at a lot of the reviews, they're full of wannabe Roger Eberts.
Well, there's also the other end. There's like the Twitter, the film Twitter, right? They're on there.
Oh, yeah, film Twitter.
Yeah. Well, and Letterbox is relatively new, so I mean, it's probably a more younger generation, so they probably haven't seen half of these older movies that are great.
Like really, with this movie, with looking at this Letterboxd list, you have a combination of new hits that come out and get tons of reviews because everyone sees them right away, which is why Spider-Verse is the number 16th movie on the site.
That's pretty outrageous, and I like that movie. That's pretty outrageous.
Well, as they get speed up, you have the all-time classics that everyone has to like Schindler's List, 12 Angry Men, Goodfellas. There's a few, and you have the indies that have a few people watch them, give it high scores, and it launches it up on the average. And then you have the anime, which
people either give 5 stars or 1 star.
Well, like the big example of this one, and this got me into a fight with my wife. That got pretty heated because she loves this movie. But the Neon Genesis Evangelion movie is number 33 on the list.
What?
About even other anime movies, and above and Pulp Fiction. And her only response when I said that this kind of shows about how making these averages thing can be wrong, or how it may not be fully a good statistical study.
Skews things
and
a little.
Her only comeback was, "It's a good movie, though." I'm not saying it's not a good movie. I'm just saying
it's the 33rd greatest movie of all time.
Yeah, like if we're rating,
and even if you ask anybody who's seen more than 33 movies, is probably going to be willing to say that it's not. That's the problem with how
I don't know about that, man.
Okay, more than 33 movies that aren't anime.
Yeah, like, and again, I'm not saying it's a bad movie. I'm just saying that the list should be a little bit different. If it's actually
higher than like Casablanca.
If it's a statistical study, if it's a statistical study of movie scores, I think, and it's the whole thing, right? And everyone wants to feel like that their opinion is objective fact. I mean, you go to film school. Going to film school like we did will make you really hate talking about movies.
That's for sure.
People that think they're have amazing opinions on movies, and their opinions are just.
They haven't really learned anything. They just learned to pretend that they have, so they can make their opinion sound like important.
See, my opinion means more than your opinion.
I'm not trying to crap on people that legitimately love movies, but it's the people that are the gatekeepers, right? We keep using the word gatekeepers. People that you say, I like this movie, and go, no, that's not right. Actually, like you use those buzzwords, but then can't actually give you a decent opinion back. Like, or love to crap on you for liking a movie that they themselves haven't actually seen. Those are my favorite.
Yeah, that's always fun. Have you seen this movie? Well, no, but I heard.
No, but Rotten Tomatoes said it was bad. I've heard that a lot. Rotten Tomatoes said it was negative, so therefore it's bad. Or at the same time, people that are like, well, Rotten Tomatoes said it's good, therefore it's probably good. Well, no. And yeah, I mean, I get it's probably a topic that's going to probably piss some people off because we probably said some inflammatory things.
Probably.
But I guess I want to be clear in that I want people to know that movies are for everyone. Love what you love. Watch what you want to watch.
You're going to like something someone else isn't, so just enjoy it and don't give the other person crap.
Even if I don't like it, I'm glad that you found something that makes you happy. That's what it's all about, right?
Exactly.
It's about finding stuff that makes you happy.
We want every movie to be home run.
Unless you're Alex Overdale. In that case, you can fuck off with stuff you don't like. Glenn Ross is a good movie. Fight me.
Wrong. It's a good play.
Kiss my ass. But that's the big thing, right? Like, especially because you have to realize that I have to learn sometimes that most people don't give as much of a shit about some of this stuff as I do. There are some that do, which is why we're friends. But other times, and I guess film critics need to learn that too, which is why award shows are dying. It's why no one's watching because no one cares because they can't connect to the movies being shown. There's no personal connection to the content that's being given to them, and I think that's actually a pretty serious issue, which led to the disastrous decision to try and make the Oscar category of Best Popular Movie.
Oh my gosh. If it's not good enough to be up for Best Picture, it's not good enough.
Which is them missing the point of what people want.
And it's the other thing that people don't realize, like, people have kind of started to act like the Oscars is supposed to be for them when it's not. It's televised so that you can watch it if you want, but it's supposed to be the industry awarding certain films. It used to not be shown at all. Like, it's not designed to be for the audience.
Yeah, it's not the MTV Movie Awards.
Yeah, if you want most popular movie, go to the MTV Movie Awards. There. And not all Oscar films. I mean, Oscars are a great one to look back and see how perceptions have changed. Holy crap! Yeah, man. Well, it's not like this one over this because again, like we talked about with critics not always judging them by their merits. That happens with the Oscars too. Some movies, this director is unpopular at this time, so this isn't going to win. That's why Citizen Kane didn't win.
It's why Adam Sandler didn't get nominated for Uncut Gems. That's exactly why. It's why Disney wins animated feature every year almost.
Yeah.
That's why Lego Movie didn't even get nominated, except for Song for some stupid reason.
Yeah, that was the biggest shocker.
And then the one that should have won, which is that year, which was How to Train Your Dragon 2, still lost
to Big Hero 6.
Yep, it's because the Oscars don't care about animation.
No,
much like most people. But even in some of the live action ones, I mean, Bohemian Rhapsody getting as far as it did and losing to Green Book, which no one liked.
Well, freaking Bohemian Rhapsody winning Best Editing. Good God.
One of the worst edited films.
Again, here we go. Another thing with the Queen song.
Cut.
It's edited to the song, so because it's a good song, it was good. It was edited very well. But the rest of the movie that was edited together was shit.
That's a movie. If you want to talk about people with opinions, that one irked me because I saw many people were like, "Well, I like Queen music, so I like the movie." It's like, well, I mean, basically, the only thing it sound like that you couldn't like Queen music and like the movie at the same time.
Well, it was essentially them saying is like, oh, I went and listened to I was giving it a music review rather than a movie review. The music was really good. Well, it's like I've heard a lot of, like, I've tried to ask this question because I like Rocket Man a lot more than I liked Bohemian Rhapsody. But the more people you ask, the more people are like, oh, I like Bohemian Rhapsody better. And it's like, okay.
You mean the people who didn't see Rocket Man?
Well, Rocket Man's a little different. Rocket Man is like a straight up musical. But it works better because it's a straight up musical, in my opinion. It actually has some imagination to it. Unlike Bohemian Rhapsody, which is just and I do like Rami Malek. I love Mr. Robot, but his performance was not performance, in my opinion. It was an impression. Much like most of the movie was them just recreating stuff that already existed. Like the whole, I would say about how amazing it was that they recreated Live Aid. Which is like, yeah, it's impressive, but literally anyone can do that.
Give us $1,000, we could recreate something.
That's a college assignment. Every college cinematography course is recreate shots from movies that already exist. It's not creative. It's not, ingenious. I mean, Rocket Man, using the music the way it did, I think, it made the film more thematic.
It added to it.
Yeah. And didn't get as much Oscar love at all. I think the Oscars know they're dying. I mean, the Golden Globes, geez, the ratings this year were a disaster. And holy crap.
Yeah, I think the Golden Globes could be. I really don't think the Oscars will die because people still talk about them and care about them. Even the people who say they don't care so that they can say they don't care.
Join this for our next episode, which will probably be our Oscar episode.
Yeah, we gotta get working on those.
Yeah, because I think they're like next weekend, which will be interesting.
Oh, we know what's winning, so.
Oh yeah, we know. But we'll get into that on our official Oscar episode of Idiot Plot, special Oscar special,
where we talk about some of the really good ones, and then we rant about a couple of them.
Mm-hmm.
It was a good year, though.
It was really good year. Actually, we actually got.
Finally see the movies.
Yeah, we got good critical reception. So yeah. In conclusion, read what critics say. That's my advice to people. But also, don't put too much stock in what they say. Like a movie.
Also, find a critic that has similar opinions to you and see what they have to say, and then you can judge it from there.
Yep. Think critically. Have some media literacy. That's my advice. But just have a good time watching movies. And I guess that will probably conclude our episode. We were talking for a long time, but I think we had some good discussion. But we can finally let it go and stop yelling about Ghostbusters and move on. So yeah, if you like what we talked about, if you didn't, comment on our YouTube channel, comment on the YouTube video for this. We'd love to hear what you think about our thoughts on reviews. What are your thoughts on reviews? Please let us know. Don't forget to like and subscribe to us on YouTube. Smash that like button. Don't forget to ring the little bell. But also you can like and subscribe to us on Spotify, Anchor FM, Google Podcast. We're also on Facebook. Like us there if you want to keep in touch with all of our happenings. But yeah, for Alex Soto on this night's song, I'm David Yanish. This has been another episode of Idiot Plot. Thank you very much for listening, and we'll see you next time.